I want to let you know something that I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season. The network will be ending The Late Show in May.
For years, people assumed they already knew why Stephen Colbert declined Jimmy Kimmel. The story seemed simple, and few questioned it. But behind that decision was a very different reality, one that never made the headlines. Only after years of speculation did Colbert finally explain what was really going through his mind. And once you hear his reason, the entire story takes on a completely different meaning. The phone call that ended an empire. In July 2026, Jimmy Kimmel sat down with Variety during his annual summer break and revealed something the public had never heard before. He had personally asked Stephen Colbert to guest host Jimmy Kimmel Live after Colbert's show ended in May. Kimmel made it clear that the offer was not limited to a single week or a summer slot. He told Colbert he could host any time he wanted, and that Kimmel would gladly step aside, whether it was July or January. Colbert turned him down. When Kimmel was asked why Colbert refused, he said, "Of course I asked him, and I think it feels premature." That single word carried a weight that most people completely missed. Colbert was not bitter. He was protecting the meaning of his exit, because walking onto someone else's stage just weeks after losing his own would have cheapened everything he and Kimmel had built together over the previous decade. And the strangest part of all of this is that Kimmel was not surprised by the refusal. He understood it completely. The two men share a bond so deep that Kimmel's response to the rejection was not disappointment, but admiration. He left the door wide open and moved on, because that is what these two have always done for each other. But to understand why Colbert said no, you need to understand the events that made that refusal the most logical and the most emotional decision of his entire career. It started with a phone call in July 2025. Colbert was on vacation when his manager, James Dixon, pulled him aside for a private conversation that lasted about 15 minutes. Dixon never called during breaks unless something serious had happened. CBS had decided to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Effective May 2026, the highest-rated network late-night program for 9 consecutive seasons was being erased. CBS called it a purely financial decision. Colbert came home 2.5 hours after that call, visibly shaken. His wife Evie met him at the door and jokingly asked, "What happened? Did you get canceled?" He looked at her and said, "Yes, I did." She thought he was playing around. He was not. The next morning, he faced 200 staff members who had no idea their jobs were about to disappear. He told only his executive producer. He taped the entire show as if nothing had changed, held the secret through every segment and every joke, and then, after saying goodnight to the studio audience, he asked nobody to leave. He walked backstage, gathered his crew, and told them the truth. He later admitted he had sweated through his shirt during that meeting because carrying the weight of that secret through an entire taping nearly broke him. 3 days before this phone call, Colbert had stood on his own stage and called Paramount Global's $16 million settlement with Donald Trump over a 60 minutes editing dispute a big fat bribe. Comedians almost never attack the corporation signing their paychecks on national television. Colbert did it without flinching. The settlement was tied to Paramount's multi-billion-dollar merger with Skydance Media, a deal that required approval from federal regulators, including the FCC. Many viewers connected the dots immediately, and 3 days later, Colbert's show was dead. CBS denied any connection. Unnamed sources told reporters the show was losing $40 to $50 million per year. But Colbert later revealed a detail that gutted the financial argument. In 2023, less than 2 years before the cancellation, CBS had offered him a 5-year contract renewal. He accepted a 3-year extension instead. Across the country in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel was marching at a No Kings protest rally with his wife and children when his phone buzzed with the news. Within hours, Kimmel posted Colbert's announcement on his Instagram story and wrote, "Love you, Stephen, F you and all your Sheldons, CBS." The Sheldons crack was aimed at CBS's devotion to Big Bang Theory spin-offs over prestige programming. The man who was supposed to be Colbert's biggest rival had just declared war on the network that killed his show, and the bond behind that fury had been building for over a decade, the man they called Baby Doll. Late-night television was built on hostility. Johnny Carson froze out anyone who threatened his position. David Letterman and Jay Leno's feud became so toxic that when Letterman retired in 2015, Leno declined an invitation to appear on his final broadcast. Kimmel himself carried deep resentment toward Leno after the older host forced Conan O'Brien out of The Tonight Show in 2010. Years later, Kimmel confronted Leno about it at a party thrown by Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. And Affleck made the whole situation worse by wandering over and saying, "Don't you guys have like a feud or something?" before casually walking away. So when Colbert inherited Letterman's desk in September 2015, everyone assumed the old wars would simply transfer to a new generation. Colbert versus Fallon versus Kimmel. It was 3 hosts, 3 networks, and 1 throne. That expectation died almost immediately. 6 weeks into his late show run, Colbert took a vacation. Kimmel appeared as a guest and mocked him for it. "Do you work more than 6 weeks in a row?" Kimmel asked. Colbert fired back, "You should get a better agent." Kimmel grinned and said, "We have the same agent." That was the moment America learned about James Dixon. Dixon, whom both hosts called Baby Doll, ran a boutique talent management firm out of New York that also represented Jon Stewart, Carson Daly, and Adam Carolla. He had been in the business since the late 1980s, and by the time WMEIMG acquired his firm in 2015, Dixon represented the hosts of 3 of the 4 most significant shows in late-night comedy. Colbert called him the real king of late-night on-air. Kimmel bonded with Colbert over Dixon's eccentricities, joking about his permanent tan, his chain smoking, and his habit of burning through a bottle of Versace cologne every single week. Kimmel, who is a visual artist in his spare time, had even painted a lithograph portrait of Dixon smoking a cigarette and given it to Colbert as a Christmas present. Colbert displayed it on The Late Show with genuine admiration. The Dixon connection did something that had never existed in the history of the format. It structurally eliminated the incentive to compete. Where Letterman and Leno had separate agents pushing separate agendas, Colbert and Kimmel had one man whose financial success depended on both of them thriving. The rivalry was worth more alive than dead, but only if nobody actually drew blood. Kimmel explained it during that first Late Show appearance with disarming honesty. "I think it was established with Letterman and Leno, and people thought it would just continue like the Crusades." He dismissed the entire premise. Both men understood that the real threat was not each other. The real threat was the slow death of the format itself, as audiences migrated to YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, and streaming platforms. They were not rivals guarding separate kingdoms. Within 2 years of that first on-air meeting, both Colbert and Kimmel would transform from comedians into political combatants, and the President of the United States would personally target them with a level of hostility that fused their professional bond into something far more personal and far more dangerous. 2 targets and 1 crosshair. After Donald Trump's election in November 2016, Colbert rebuilt his entire program around sharp, aggressive political monologues. The gamble paid off spectacularly. By the end of that television season, he had overtaken Jimmy Fallon in the ratings, and he would hold the top position for 9 straight years. Trump attacked him repeatedly on social media, calling him boring and talentless, and predicting his ratings would collapse. The ratings climbed instead. Kimmel's evolution took a slightly different path. After a deeply personal 2017 monologue about his newborn son's open-heart surgery, Kimmel publicly advocated for healthcare reform and landed squarely in Trump's crosshairs. Trump branded him terrible and untalented. Kimmel's audience held firm. When Kimmel hosted the Oscars in 2024 and Trump mocked his performance, Colbert defended him on The Late Show with a line that revealed exactly how deep their relationship had become. "You keep my friend Jimmy Kimmel's name out of your weird little wet mouth." He added that Kimmel was his podcast brother from Strikeforce 5 and that he had vowed to defend him until his death or until the next ad for Mint Mobile. That podcast became another defining chapter. During the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike, all 5 major late-night hosts found themselves off the air simultaneously. Colbert, Kimmel, Fallon, Seth Meyers and John Oliver started meeting on Zoom calls to discuss the reality of a work stoppage. And those private calls turned into 13 episodes of a podcast called Strikeforce 5, with all proceeds going to their out-of-work writing staff. The five men teased each other relentlessly, debated who was most likely to cry on air, and even argued about who had the best Wikifeet rating, which Colbert won and proved by removing his sock on camera. 2 years later, the Strikeforce 5 group threw Colbert a surprise 60th birthday party at a restaurant in New York. Colbert nearly ruined it by telling his wife that morning that he was too tired to go out to dinner. She panicked because she knew the surprise was waiting and tearfully insisted on a romantic evening. Seth Meyers later admitted on The Late Show, "It's really unfair what we asked of her." These were not colleagues performing friendship for cameras. In September 2025, with Colbert still processing the death of his own show, something happened to Kimmel that shook both men to their core. Tonight, we are all Jimmy Kimmel. On September 15th, Kimmel delivered a monologue about the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. He did not joke about Kirk's death. His criticism was directed at what he described as efforts by some MAGA figures to politicize the killing. 2 days later, 90 minutes before taping, Kimmel got a phone call from ABC executives. He retreated to the only private space in his crowded office, the bathroom. The executives told him they wanted to take the temperature down and had decided to pull the show off the air. Kimmel disagreed. There was a vote. He lost. He put the phone down, walked out, and told his executive producers it was over. "I thought, that's it," Kimmel recalled later. "I'm never coming back on the air." That same evening at the Ed Sullivan Theater, a staff member handed Colbert a smartphone while he was on stage. He read the article about Kimmel's suspension to the audience. Gasps filled the room. Colbert stared at the screen, said "wow" several times, and then walked off stage. He returned minutes later and told his audience he would call Kimmel privately the next day. 2 nights after that, Colbert opened his show by declaring, "I'm your host, Stephen Colbert, but tonight we are all Jimmy Kimmel." He called ABC's decision blatant censorship and warned the network that caving to political pressure would never satisfy the people demanding silence. Over 400 entertainment industry figures signed an ACLU-backed open letter condemning the suspension. 6 days later, ABC reversed the decision. When Kimmel returned to the air, fighting tears, he said, "It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man." Colbert responded to Kimmel's return by bringing out one of his Emmy Awards and joking, "Once more, I am the only martyr in late night." Then he turned directly to camera and said, "Wait, unless CBS? You want to announce anything? What, still no? Right, because the money thing? I forgot." 13 days after Kimmel's return, the two men did something that had never been attempted in the entire history of late-night television. Something designed specifically, as Kimmel put it, to drive the president nuts. The night they broke late night. On September 30th, 2025, Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert did something that had never been attempted in the entire history of the format. They appeared as guests on each other's shows simultaneously. Kimmel was taping in Brooklyn. Colbert was taping at the Ed Sullivan Theater. Both programs aired the same night. At one point during the broadcast, both hosts waved to each other from their respective stages on monitors. "We thought it might be a fun way to drive the president nuts," Kimmel told his audience. The Instagram photo posted before the broadcast showed Kimmel, Colbert, and Seth Meyers on stage together with the caption, "Hi, Donald." Kimmel walked out on The Late Show set to Elton John's "I'm Still Standing," and immediately told Colbert, "We have to stick together." On Jimmy Kimmel Live in Brooklyn, Colbert gave his first in-depth interview about the cancellation, describing how Dixon delivered the news, how his wife guessed the truth without knowing, and how he held the secret through an entire taping. Both hosts discovered that James Taylor had texted each of them separately when their respective crises hit. Kimmel joked, "I want to see if JT did a cut and paste on us." The night ended at the Ed Sullivan Theater with Kimmel's sidekick, Guillermo Rodriguez, pouring tequila shots. The three men toasted to good friends, great jobs, and late-night TV. Kimmel's staff jokingly asked if he was hiring. Colbert responded, I'll be Guillermo's sidekick." Behind the laughter, 200 people on The Late Show were running out of time. But Kimmel was already planning something else, a gesture so unusual it had almost no precedent in the history of television awards campaigns. "I'm voting for Stephen." In August 2025, a massive billboard went up at the intersection of Santa Monica Boulevard and La Cienega in West Hollywood, blocks from Television Academy headquarters. The billboard featured Kimmel's face, the logo for his own nominated show, and 3 words in large white lettering: "I'm voting for Stephen." Both Jimmy Kimmel Live and The Late Show were nominated for Outstanding Talk Series. Nobody in living memory had ever rented a billboard to campaign against themselves in favor of a direct competitor. Kimmel told Variety that summer, "He's not just a sweet man. He is very moral. He is the salt of the earth. He is a humble person and an extremely smart person." The Late Show had been nominated 9 times under Colbert without ever winning. On Emmy night in September 2025, Colbert was selected as the ceremony's first presenter. The moment he walked on stage, the audience erupted into a standing ovation and chanted, "Stephen, Stephen," while he stood visibly moved. When The Late Show won Outstanding Talk Series for the first time, the ovation was even louder. The next night, Colbert opened his show with, "Welcome to the Emmy-winning Late Show." He thanked Kimmel and Jon Stewart directly, calling them old friends, unbelievably talented, and 2 princes. It feels premature. On May 21st, 2026, Colbert hosted the final episode of The Late Show. Paul McCartney was the final guest, performing on the same Ed Sullivan Theatre stage where the Beatles had debuted in 1964. Jon Batiste returned. Elvis Costello performed. Both Jimmy Kimmel Live and The Tonight Show aired reruns that night, so America had no option except to watch Colbert's farewell. John Oliver ended that week's Last Week Tonight by encouraging viewers to tune in. When Letterman left, Leno had declined to show up. When Conan lost his show, none of his peers stood beside him. Colbert's rivals cleared the entire runway. In his final week, Colbert gathered all 4 Strikeforce 5 members on his stage. Kimmel looked at him and said, "I'm waiting for Angry Stephen to come out. I want to see you go nuts." Colbert deflected gently. "You guys started before I did. Each of your shows started before this show. And then you're going to be here after I'm here." John Oliver, never one for restraint, said flatly, "As someone from a different era of television, I can tell you it was some fresh bullshit." Then Colbert was gone. He announced no return to late night. He signed no deal with any streaming platform. Instead, he turned to a lifelong passion, signing on as an executive producer for The Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum. He hinted at a possible run for political office on Seth Meyers' show, saying, "If there is some way for me to serve the American people in some way that could possibly be greater than a late-night television show, I would consider that." In June 2026, the first full month without The Late Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live averaged 3.15 million viewers, the highest monthly audience in its 23-year history, and a 24% spike from May. Colbert's audience had migrated to the desk of the man who fought hardest for him to keep his own. Kimmel acknowledged it with his usual dry wit. "The ratings are very strong, which we are very grateful to CBS for their wisdom." Then he added, "I've always thought of our show as an orphanage." Stephen Colbert's refusal was not a rejection of Kimmel or of late night. It was the final act of a man who understood that some exits are worth protecting. Drop a comment and tell us whether you believe Colbert will ever return to late night or if he has already found something bigger.